I would like to start off by discussing our restaurant review. The restaurant review is our first written assignment. It is a short 500-word review of a restaurant of your choice. It doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be anything. It could be Taco Bell, it could be your school cafeteria, it could be someplace that you go to regularly, and that is okay. But the point and purpose of this assignment is for you to look at something with a fresh approach. I don't want you to spend a lot of money. You don't even have to spend any money. You can just look at kind of the service that's going on. You can observe people, but I want you to go someplace with the intent of looking at how you're going to review it. So we'll begin by explaining a little bit of how we're going to do our restaurant review. So we're going to begin by just picking a restaurant. Like I said, it can be anything. We're going to visit it. Can't write this review from an experience from 2 weeks ago. It has to be something that is has a purpose. You're going to observe everything. You're going to note the floor. You're going to look at how the person who takes your order is dressed. You're going to look at everything. You want your order, you eat it, and you want to take notes. So let's move on. Sorry. All right. So we have to consider that when we write a review, there is criteria. We're doing a critique. So the word right here, critique means criteria. It's a review of that criteria. We have to consider what type of restaurant it is. Where you go matters. You're not going to hold Taco Bell up to a fancy 5-star restaurant standards. You have expectations. What are those? How does the name, how does the location help you understand what type of restaurant it is? Consider the type of food it serves. Is it fast and cheap? Is it maybe not nutritionally great but tasty? Those things are what you have to consider. How does that impact its service? Consider Taco Bell. They have, 50 different ways of presenting beef or chicken, beans, and cheese. Those things, and they make them into all sorts of different combinations. Same food, different containers. How does that impact the price and the speed of production? Consider who eats there and when and why. When is the Waffle House at its busiest? When is Taco Bell at its busiest? Why might that be? What does that clientele tell you about the restaurant? Consider the price and how that is important. What might that be saying about who they prefer as the clientele? What might it say about the, let's say, quality of the food or of the service? Consider the value. Are you getting your money's worth? Is it just the food, or is there part of the participation in this environment? You don't go to Chuck E. Cheese for the pizza. You go there because there are games attached. So consider those various things. And finally, what is the atmosphere? McDonald's has a very different atmosphere than a fancy sit-down restaurant. We know that Buffalo Wild Wings and Hooters, they have a specific atmosphere that other restaurants don't have. So what are they trying to do for you as a customer? Those are things that you will have to consider. Next, I'm sorry, I keep going through this really quickly. Next, we have to understand our criteria. I've already talked about how fast food has a very specific type of food, so does a fancy restaurant. What are those expectations? You might think of a fancy restaurant having small portions, kind of strange food. It might be something you would see on Food Network, whereas fast food, it's burgers and fries and chicken. Consider the price. There's value meals. There's a whole section of the fast casual dining like Panera and Chipotle that charges under $10 for a meal, but it's still fairly expensive, but also different. What are they doing with their price? We would expect a fancy restaurant to have higher prices, $20 to $30 for a meal, maybe no drink refills and things like that. Consider who is eating there. Who do you see at fast food restaurants? families, small kids, um, people who are traveling, who eats at fancy restaurants. Well, they're dressed up. They can eat there because they can afford to eat there. They want to present that they can afford to eat there. There might be families. It might be older couples. Look at who is in the restaurant when you are there. Consider the cleanliness. You might be happy that your Taco Bell just has toilet paper, or the trash can isn't overflowing, and that would make you happy. Look at the bathroom and see what's there. If you go to a fancy restaurant, you expect it to be clean. You expect there to be linens on the tablecloth and cloth napkins and actual silverware as opposed to the paper napkins and the tray that may or may not have been cleaned um, the last time it was used. Um, Consider what you do with your food when you're done. Do you take a tray to the trash can and dispose of it yourself, or do you have someone who cleans up after you? Those are important things to consider, and what that goes into the price. Consider your service. Fancy restaurant, you'll be greeted at the door. You'll have somebody seat you at a table. They'll ask you, "Is this table okay?" And it's like it doesn't matter because they can move you if you want, because people will. You have a waiter that will give you water within a certain amount of time. Take your wine or beer order if you're drinking that. They have separate menus for drinks and for appetizers and for desserts and things. Um, they may even have appetizers, whereas fast food, it's just eat and go. You walk yourself in, you go up to a counter, they call your name, and you do a lot more on your own. You get your own drinks at a fast food restaurant. So, and everything is disposable. So those are things to consider. And the atmosphere. Is it noisy? Fast food restaurant. Yes. There might be music. What music is it? Um, is it bright? Many fast food restaurants are bright because trying to have this very present the idea of it being clean, but you also it becomes very sterile and hospital-like. Whereas a fancy restaurant will have nice music playing. They might have live music. It's carpeted, and it's dim. Why might it be dim? Consider those things that are going on. So all these come into play for your restaurant review. Then once you've done everything, you've taken your notes, evaluate your experience. What were your expectations going in? You might want to write that down. What do you think you're going to get? And then how did your review or your review experience meet your expectations? Did this restaurant fall short? Were you expecting something good and it was bad? What does that say? Did they get your order right if you're going to McDonald's? Is that a victory? You get extra fries. How was that? Or did it exceed your expectations? So weigh your expectations with the results. Consider the food. Think of it in terms other than good or bad. Consider fresh, flavorful, seasoned, warm. That's a victory in itself at McDonald's, getting warm fries. Um, if you're at a fancy restaurant, does it look like it's been sitting around for a while? Or if you go to Applebee's, is your food warmed? Is it given to you in an appropriate amount of time? Those are things that you have to consider, not just good or bad, but what those words actually mean. How do we define good? And how do we define bad? So look at things from a fresh perspective. Consider your high school cafeteria. You might have low opinions of it because it may not be great food. Service may not be great. You just file through the line, they dump a bunch of stuff on your plate. But we have to also consider what is going on. It's at a school, it's a public service. There might be hundreds of students that have to be served. There might only be 4 people who are doing all the serving. We have to consider the prep time. How much time do they actually have to make this food? What equipment do they have in the kitchen? What regulations do they have to follow? We have to consider the cost as well. It may cost you $1.50 up front for the meal, but things we have to consider are the hidden costs. One of the rules for high school food pricing, or for cafeteria food pricing, is that it has to include not only the food, but the labor that goes into it. So that $1.50 is portioned out for everybody in the school who is eating. And so it's not just the food cost, but how much it costs to pay those people who are preparing the food and cleaning up. So if you're trying to keep the prices low, the cost of labor is low, meaning a lot more has to be pre-prepared food rather than things that are cooked and made fresh. So those are things that we have to try to understand that you may not know. And then consider the overall goal of the high school cafeteria. They're trying to serve fairly nutritious food that is quick, easy to make, that is balanced and meets all the various guidelines. So consider that overall goal. Next step is we write our essay. Now, a restaurant, if we look at our writing context from the handbook, we can see how the various rhetorical situations of purpose, audience, genre, topic, stance, and media are part of that overall restaurant. The purpose is to serve food, maybe a particular type of food. The audience is their customer. They might prefer a specific type of customer. The genre is the type of restaurant, whether it's an Applebee's or a Taco Bell or a Hooters. Not that I've ever been to Hooters. I should clarify that. The topic is the food. What type of food they're serving? Is it a specific type? Is it all American food? Is it Mexican or Tex-Mex, or is it Chinese or sushi? Consider the stance or tone. That's the service. When you walk into that door, how you are greeted, how they're taking care of you. And then the media and design is the atmosphere of that restaurant, the shape of the building, its location, how easy it is to maneuver through it. An essay also has those various rhetorical situations to consider. The purpose. Every essay is going to inform, persuade, or explain, or some combination thereof. The purpose of your critique or your restaurant review is to explain, inform, and then maybe convince your reader that they should try it out or should avoid it. But you have to give that evidence. Your audience is a reader. We have to consider who is going to be reading this, who might pick up a review of a Taco Bell other than your teacher. Why would somebody want to read that? And you write to that specific type of person. Genre is the mode or the type of writing. This is a critique, it's criticism, it's a review. So everything that you write is going to be based on examples and your experience and evidence. Your topic is this subject, it's the review, it's this restaurant. You don't want to stray away and start talking about that one time when your buddies at Taco Bell ate 15 burritos or whatever. Focus on writing about the restaurant, not yourself, but the restaurant itself. And then your stance and tone is the writing. We'll be able to tell from your tone whether or not you have a favorable opinion or an unfavorable opinion. It's all in your language. What words are you choosing? And finally, the presentation. We're presenting this as an essay, so we don't have to worry too much about that. But we want it to be a formal paper. We don't want it to be filled with errors or poor spacing and making it hard to read. So those are some things to help you out, help you out with your restaurant review. And I hope this video helps you out. I've said that before, but I usually do this in class, and I want to make sure you had plenty of things to look at. So look at the example. It's a decent example, but read that. That'll give you an idea of what you should and maybe shouldn't do. Good luck.